The promise had been made beneath an old oak tree with scraped knees, muddy shoes, and the kind of innocent certainty that only children possess. We had laughed as we tied a blade of grass around each other's fingers, pretending it was a wedding ring. Everyone else forgot that afternoon as the years rolled by, but one person never did. I certainly didn't expect that after 12 years away, returning to my hometown would force me to prove whether that childish promise had ever truly meant anything. The moment I stepped off the bus, I discovered that some promises don't grow old, they simply wait for the right time to test your heart. Before we continue, if you believe kindness, loyalty, and second chances can change lives, please take a moment to like this video, share it with someone you love, leave a comment telling us where you're watching from, and subscribe to the channel so you never miss another heartwarming story. Home looked smaller than I remembered, yet somehow carried more memories than ever before. Every street corner whispered my childhood back to me. The bakery still filled the morning air with warm bread, the little bridge over the creek still creaked beneath every passing step, and the giant oak tree still stood proudly in the park as if it had been guarding our secret all these years. I had spent 12 years building a career in another city, convincing myself that chasing success was more important than looking back. Promotions, deadlines, and endless business trips slowly replaced birthdays, reunions, and familiar faces. Somewhere along the way, I stopped calling as often. I told myself everyone would understand. After all, life moves on. Or at least I believed it did. There was only one person I couldn't stop thinking about during the long ride home. Emma had been my shadow since kindergarten. We learned to ride bicycles together, built impossible treehouses, failed spectacularly at fishing, and survived every awkward stage of growing up side by side. When my parents divorced, she was the one who waited outside my house every afternoon just to make sure I wasn't alone. When her mother became sick, I spent countless evenings helping her around the house without ever being asked. We never called it love because children rarely understand what love truly is. We simply believed we'd always be there for each other. Then life interrupted us. My scholarship took me across the country, and ambition convinced me I had no choice but to leave. Emma hugged me tightly before I boarded the train. I still remembered how her eyes glistened, though she smiled bravely and wished me luck. I promised I'd come back. I promised nothing would change. Then the years slipped away faster than either of us expected. When I arrived at my parents' house, my mother greeted me with tears that made the lost years feel painfully real. During dinner, she casually mentioned that Emma still lived in town. She now taught art at the elementary school and spent weekends volunteering at the community center. My mother smiled strangely before adding that Emma had never married despite receiving countless proposals. I laughed nervously, pretending the comment meant nothing, but my heart suddenly felt much heavier than my suitcase. The next morning, I walked toward the park without really planning to. My feet seemed to remember the path better than my mind did. The old oak tree stood exactly where it always had. Someone had carefully carved 2 faded initials into its trunk years ago. I traced them with my fingers, realizing they belonged to us. That was when I heard footsteps behind me. Emma looked older, of course, but only in the ways that made her even more beautiful. Life had added wisdom to her smile and quiet strength to her eyes. She didn't run into my arms. She didn't cry. She simply looked at me for a long moment, almost as if she had spent years imagining this exact meeting and wanted to be certain it was real. The warmth between us felt familiar, yet there was an invisible distance neither of us knew how to cross. We spent the afternoon walking through town, speaking about ordinary things while carefully avoiding the questions that truly mattered. Every shared memory carried laughter wrapped in regret. Every silence spoke louder than words. As sunset painted the sky, we finally stopped beneath the old oak tree. Emma reached into her bag and carefully unfolded a tiny, worn piece of paper. It was faded with age, the edges softened by countless years. It was my handwriting. The childish note declared that one day I would come back, marry my best friend, and build a home beside the creek because no matter where life took me, she would always be my favorite person. She had kept it. Every single year. She quietly explained that she never expected a child to understand forever. She wasn't angry that I had left. She wasn't even angry that I had stayed away for so long. But promises mattered because they reflected the kind of person someone hoped to become. If I truly believed that promise still meant something, then I couldn't simply repeat old words. I would have to prove that I finally understood what they were worth. That challenge stayed with me long after I returned home that evening. Over the following weeks, I slowly realized proving love had nothing to do with expensive rings or dramatic speeches. Emma never asked for gifts. She never asked me to impress her. Instead, she quietly watched the choices I made every day. She noticed whether I visited my aging parents without being reminded. She noticed whether I stopped to help neighbors repair broken fences. She noticed whether I remembered people's names. She noticed whether I listened more than I spoke. She noticed whether success had made me selfish. For the first time in years, I began living without constantly checking my phone or chasing another promotion. I volunteered at the community center beside her. I helped repaint classrooms before the new school year began. I coached children's soccer games every Saturday morning. I discovered that the town I once believed was too small had somehow become large enough to heal everything I thought success could replace. Yet even as my heart found its way home, another obstacle appeared. My company offered me the biggest promotion of my career. The salary was life-changing. The position required moving overseas for several years. Colleagues congratulated me before I had even accepted it. Old dreams stood on one side. Everything that truly mattered stood on the other. For several sleepless nights, I convinced myself I could somehow have both. Perhaps another long-distance relationship would work this time. Perhaps I could leave again without breaking anything. Then I looked at that faded childhood note once more. Suddenly I understood that proving my promise wasn't about choosing Emma over my career. It was about choosing the life I genuinely wanted instead of the life everyone expected me to chase. I declined the promotion. People called me foolish. Some friends insisted I'd regret sacrificing such an incredible opportunity. But for the first time in many years, I felt completely certain of my decision. Several months passed peacefully. Emma and I grew closer naturally, never rushing what life had patiently protected through all those years. We laughed like children again while painting murals with her students. We spent evenings watching sunsets beside the creek. We visited elderly neighbors who rarely received visitors. Every ordinary day quietly became extraordinary because we were finally present for it. One rainy afternoon, disaster struck. The community center where dozens of local children gathered every week suffered severe flood damage after relentless storms overflowed the nearby river. Books, artwork, furniture, and years of memories were destroyed almost overnight. Watching children cry over ruined paintings broke Emma's heart. Without thinking twice, the entire town came together. Carpenters offered free labor. Restaurants donated meals. Teenagers carried heavy supplies. Retired teachers sorted damaged books. I used my savings, the money I once planned to invest elsewhere, to help rebuild the center from the ground up. Working side by side with everyone reminded me that real wealth wasn't measured by bank accounts. It was measured by the number of people willing to stand beside you when everything seemed broken. The grand reopening became more emotional than anyone expected. Children filled the halls with laughter once again. Parents wiped away grateful tears. Emma stood quietly in the doorway watching families return. Then she turned toward me with the same gentle smile I remembered from childhood. She didn't need speeches. She didn't need impossible promises anymore. Everything she wanted to know had already been answered by the life we had rebuilt together. A few days later, I returned alone to the old oak tree. This time I carried a simple ring instead of a blade of grass. The tree had witnessed our childhood promise. It deserved to witness its fulfillment. As I knelt beneath its branches, I realized I wasn't asking Emma to marry me because of something I had promised as a little boy. I was asking because every choice since coming home had shown me that loving someone means showing up every day, especially after you've failed before. She accepted with tears streaming down her face, and somehow those tears carried every goodbye, every lonely birthday, every missed Christmas, every unanswered letter, and every hope that had quietly survived despite the passing years. The wedding wasn't extravagant. Neighbors decorated the community center with handmade flowers. Children painted colorful signs. My mother cried through nearly the entire ceremony. Emma wore the simplest dress imaginable, yet I had never seen anyone more beautiful. When we exchanged rings beneath the same oak tree where two children had once tied grass around each other's fingers, everyone present understood they weren't watching a fairy tale. They were watching forgiveness. They were watching patience. They were watching two imperfect people finally become the people they had always hoped to be. If this story touched your heart, please like this video, share it with someone who still believes in true love, leave your thoughts below, and subscribe to the channel for more emotional stories that remind us what really matters. Special request: before this story ends, please leave a comment with the words, "Promises kept," if you believe that true love is proven by actions, not just words. As the years continued to pass, life remained wonderfully ordinary. We still argued over little things, laughed over old memories, volunteered together every weekend, and returned to the oak tree every anniversary. Sometimes we would watch children playing beneath its branches, smiling as they made impossible promises of their own. Most adults would probably laugh at those innocent dreams. We never did. We knew that while childhood promises may sound simple, they possess an incredible power when they inspire someone to become better than they were yesterday. In the end, it wasn't a promise made by two children that changed our lives. It was the decision, many years later, to finally live in a way that honored it. And perhaps that is what love has always been, not finding someone perfect, but becoming someone worthy of the faith another person never stopped placing in your heart.